jobs are lost, and more importantly, opportunities are lost.
Right now, government says it will negotiate with manufacturers to lower the price of medication. This follows an announcement that the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority has registered Cabotegrivir. This is an HIV pre-prevention jab that significantly decreases someone's chance of contracting HIV through sex. The shot is taken once every month. Studies have shown it works better than a daily HIV prevention pill. And it's also sold in the US and Australia. Let's discuss this further now. We're joined by Tohlang Sehloho, who is a Senior Manager for Clinical Evaluation and Management at SAHPRA. Tohlang, thank you very much for your time here on ENCA. Just firstly, this is of course good news for a country such as ours, where we're at the top when it comes to statistics about people who are contracting HIV, especially these days with concern around young people.
Of course, this is a welcome development in terms of the armamentarium that we need in terms of HIV prevention, because as we have noticed, the COVID pandemic just sort of hit the underlying HIV pandemic in terms of incident rates of infection. Now, this a new drug that we have recently approved does add a certain angle where we now target incident infections when we have sort of stabilized ART, where people can live longer even with HIV infection. But now we need to cut to the chase and prevent further infection, because down the line it means we're going to have to spend more on ART. Yes.
Exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of concern about the cost of this particular injection. And I'll ask you about information as to how it's administered, etc. I know that it's once every 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. But there's concern about the price. And this, of course, reminds me of the debate during the days of the ARVs and, you know, the ability to get access even for the poorest of the poor. I know that SAHPRA, you know, basically your job is done here by approving the drug to be sold in South Africa. But can you assist government in influencing, you know, how much it costs, you know, influencing the manufacturers, so that in a country like ours, people who, for instance, live in rural areas or poor areas can also afford to get this injection?
Yeah, I wish we could, but our mandate extends only as far as assessing safety, efficacy, and quality. And as soon as we've done that, then the product is ready to go onto the market. Now, all those dynamics in terms of pricing, in terms of coverage potential, in terms of access, are things that are discussed at governmental level. And the NDOH obviously will have to enter into negotiations in terms of their strategic aims, in terms of reducing the impact of incident infections, and hold those discussions in terms of moderating the price so that becomes possible. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do there. Our mandates are quite clear and separate.
Now, our understanding is that, yes, the drug has been approved to come into South Africa, because, of course, if SAHPRA says yes, it means that, you know, they you know, ticked all the checks and balances in terms of safety, etc., of this particular drug. But our understanding is that it's not clear whether or not it can be used by pregnant women. It's not clear whether or not it's safe for them. So when will we know if it is safe to be administered on someone who is pregnant?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's always the case in terms of new molecules coming in, because pregnant women and babies, unless it's a trial, specifically geared to small children, are not part of clinical trials. And the only way that we know that it can be used in them is when we used observational data, where we now evaluate data that says this drug was used on a pregnant cohort, And these were the outcomes. That's where we can make definitive pronouncements in terms of whether it can be used or not. But at the moment, we just do not have the clinical trial data that tells us that it is safe to use in pregnant women. And the clinicians, the treating clinicians, are very integral to this process in terms of supplying us with the data that tells us that in the real world, we are able to do this, and these are the outcomes that we're seeing. Then we evaluate that data and come to a conclusion that might end up with us recommending it for use in pregnancy. And the same route will be followed by WHO, of course, with more data that would be available globally in terms of use in population. And then consolidation of that data will give all regulators, as well as WHO treatment guideline guidance in terms of whether use can be extended to that population group.
Yeah. So, Mr. Sehloho, we have in South Africa, obviously, the ARVs, which, technology luckily has assisted for those who are living with HIV to be able to take one pill instead of those many that used to be available a few years ago. And then we have PrEP as well. And now we have this Cabla as well that's coming into the market. What's the difference with this one, this particular injection? I know that I read that you have to take it once every 2 months. What's the difference with it? And how do I get it? Do I need to get a prescription? Can anyone get it? Or is it only like PrEP? Is it only available for people who are, who work in dangerous conditions where they are more susceptible to contracting the virus?
Yeah. The main indication in terms of the clinical trial data that we have assessed would be for sexually prevention of risk against sexually transmitted HIV. Obviously, then Cabotegrivir is a useful addition to the armamentarium that we have for PrEP. As you can recall, the current PrEP regimens are one tablet once a day, and there are risks with adherence there. And once you have risks with adherence, you are going to get risks with resistance to the treatment. Now, the advantage of this new drug is that it is once a month for the first 2 months, and then subsequent to that, it's one jab every 2 months. Now we get rid of adherence issues, and then we are sure that we will have sorted out the resistance issues, unless something comes up later on in the future, and as a responsible regulator, we will be able to respond to that and revise our recommendations, revise our recommendations for treatment guidelines and all of that. Yes.
What are the side effects of this particular injection?
Yeah. Well, look, as with all injections, obviously the first side effect that you will have would be pain at the site of injection. Okay. And that resolves in a few days, obviously. And then one that has also been reported would have been a rash. All sorts of rashes that would manifest. And that's quite normal. Once the body receives something that is novel, or is not familiar with, you will have some hypersensitivity reaction. But as soon as that hypersensitivity gets resolved through continuous use, then the medicine becomes a little bit safer. Now, other side effects obviously are temporary. They have not prevented any of the clinical trial participants to stop treatment, because they would resolve. For instance, you would have elevated liver enzymes that would resolve after a while, and that's normal. That's normal. We know that, but nothing to make this drug particularly dangerous. But obviously, even with that information, we will continue to monitor any patient. any major side effects and adverse events. Yes.
Mr. Sehloho, just my last question. Obviously, for instance, it would be advisable for someone who is in sex work to get this particular drug to protect themselves, right? But if for it, and also, you know, especially with PrEP, sometimes they also advise you if you, unfortunately in South Africa, if you have been raped, to go and take PrEP so that you can try. Obviously within a certain number of days, so that you can try and make sure that you don't contract the virus. But if you just want to protect yourself as a South African, what do? Do you go to a GP first who has to write you a prescription, or can you just go straight to the counter and buy one cash?
Yeah, no, there's an antiviral, and with antivirals we schedule them as Schedule 4. Which means to get access, we need a prescription. And I just wanted to correct one point that you made, that this is not a morning after kind of
No, I'm talking about the contracting of the virus, because the morning after is more about pregnancy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. My point would be that, look, you have to be HIV negative before you can access this. You know, it has to be verified. You have to be HIV negative because its aim is to prevent HIV infection. And I'm not quite sure. You can't wake up in the morning and say, I engaged in risky behavior, therefore I'm going to get Cabotegrivir. So you will have, there's a window period. After a while, you will have to check and see if you have been infected. And if you have been infected, then you go into retroviral treatment. This prevention medication would not be indicated for you. So there are some nuances that obviously the public understand as soon as this drug has been integrated into the health system. Yes.
I see we have to let you go, Mr. Sehloho. I'm hearing a lot of messages coming through your device there. A lot of people are looking for you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Tate Tohlang Sehloho from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. All right, let's continue with stories around health in South Africa. Several provinces are battling to operate their full fleets of ambulances. Health Minister Dr.